All right, should we start? Yep. Can you guys hear me? All right, so what I just learned when I walked in is that probably some of my slides won't be readable for you guys in the back. You can walk up and read them if you'd like. But do whatever works. It's good that you're all here. This is me. For those of you who know me or don't know me, my name is Jasper. I work for Zebia. I'm an Agile coach. I live in Holland, near Amsterdam. What I do basically is I tell stories and tell stories to large organizations and smaller organizations. Who of you guys were in the keynote yesterday morning? Was there? Oh, most people. Good. I really liked what they were telling there, saying, all right, if you're scaling up to a certain level, you might just want to use Scrum because it installs guardrails, and I like those guardrails to be there just from the beginning. What I'd like to talk about today is what happens if the guardrails stay in place too long, and teams tend to get stuck or tend to get set in their ways or are not improving anymore. I need to give a shout out to Peter. He's my colleague. We created this presentation. He's presenting it tomorrow somewhere else. So you all know this one, I hope, right? It's Scrum. You know Scrum, the Scrum process? Maybe a little bit?
Never seen this.
No, that could be. So this is a drawing another colleague of mine made of the Scrum process, and we use it in our presentations. You all know the flow and everything that goes with it, so I don't want to jump in this too much. But question to you guys: what do you see happening with the less successful Scrum teams over time? Nothing.
They stop kind of finding new things to try.
Yeah. So they get stuck. So they're probably not making their velocities or their predictions. They have a product owner that's feeling a little sad, and it gets sadder over. He or she gets sadder over time. The team is just they don't really care about improving anymore. It's when you walk up to a team and say, all right, so you've been going at this problem for a while now. Why isn't it fixed? And they're like, I don't know. It's just something that's in the organization. It's hard for us to fix. There's a Scrum Master or a coach walking around. Well, that's not me, obviously, but wondering what he should do, getting more and more desperate. And you want to make it a winning team again. So what I did here is I meshed up a whole bunch of experiences from different teams to show you a couple examples of how Kanban practices can help you get the energy back and get the teams back on track again. So the stories I'll be telling you are entirely fictional. Let's keep it like that. What I'll try to show you is we took an approach. Peter did a lot of work on this as well. We took an approach that basically consisted of keeping the current process the teams had and respecting whatever role was in there. So we did it with Scrum teams. We did it with other Agile-ish teams as well. And we started to get more focus on transparency and feedback loops in the team, just to get their focus back on the problems they were facing, and use that as an accelerant to continually improve. So what we found is that we got up to a certain point where the success of the teams would create a bottleneck somewhere else, which was a good starting point of going outwards in the whole transformation we'd work in. But we'll get to that a little later. So if you look at Agile transformations, Agile adoptions, what would be the reasons why they fail? Question.
Lack of alignment between different parts of the organisation.
Yeah.
And not aiming for the same thing.
Yeah. What else?
Dissolution.
Dissolution.
When you introduce something, you're bound to make it less efficient, at least initially. But people give up.
It's not as nice as they told us it would be. Is that what you're saying?
Because it's challenging and disruptive.
Yeah.
To make change.
All right. What else?
People don't know what they want to get out of it.
Yeah. So lack of alignment. Ish?
Well, not so much that, but why are they adopting Agile? Is it because they want to get products to market faster? But there's a whole range of reasons why they might choose to.
Yeah. What else?
Feel threatened.
Yeah, loss of status and current roles. Yeah.
They don't like the change.
Oh, they don't like the change. Yeah.
They expect it to sit with knowledge sometimes.
Yeah. So one size fits all solutions. Yeah.
Lack of supporting infrastructure, so teams are left to their own devices to work it out for themselves. There's no driving force in the organisation to make it progress.
On what kind of level do you mean? So lack of infrastructure?
Probably above team level.
Okay, yeah, so management support or support in general. Yeah. Right.
Lack of transparency.
Lack of transparency, yeah. Anything else? All right, so what we, can you read this guy, can you read this in the back? All right, then we should be more or less fine for the rest of the presentation. So we listed just a bunch of things. We don't know why we're changing. We have no freaking clue why we're doing this. We don't know what we're actually fixing. So there is a problem and we think we're fixing it by installing an agile methodology, but we don't know what we're fixing. We don't get the support from management, but they force it down our throats, top down. There could be a coaching style that just doesn't match the state the team is in at that point in time. You can keep telling people everything, but if they've been doing it for a while, they want to maybe have a different style and be listened to a little bit more. It might actually be the other way around. I know some coaches and their basic approach is, what do you think you should do? That doesn't always work. Discipline, forcing a method upon the teams. They all might be reasons why this won't work. And the thing is here, and I don't know if it was in the keynote yesterday or in some other talk, somebody said the problem people run into, or what we see people doing, is say, let's abandon Scrum and do Kanban, because the whole Scrum thing is not working for us. We don't want to work in sprints anymore, so let's do Kanban because we don't have to release every 2 weeks. The problem is you need more discipline instead of less discipline. They're trying to fix a problem, but they don't even know where the problem is and what the problem is they're fixing. So what we've been doing is we've been applying practices from the Kanban method in a Scrum context, and we're using it for various reasons. So what we've been doing is we've been applying the principles like the way Kanban describes them. So start with what you do now. So we accept the process, the current process that's in place. We accept it the way it is, and then we started making sort of a contract with teams, saying, all right, so if we're starting to do this coaching and helping you guys, we'd like a commitment from you guys to change for the better. So we're looking for improvements, and then we'll start evolving out from that way. I'll just put these up there, and the practices we're introducing, and at the speed we're introducing them depends on the problem the teams are facing. So we can usually the teams we work with already have a board. They probably have some way of putting up metrics, visualizing the way they work, or doing something. It might be electronic, it might be just with cards on the wall. But every now and then that they don't have it, so then we visualize stuff. And I think the thing we focus on most is reducing their work in progress and introducing WIP limits. So why is this combination useful? In certain situations, the whole disruptive change is not wanted. We see it in organizations, very traditional, large organizations that want to work in an agile way but are scared to just dump it on the organization, which is smart, I think. But we want to install the guardrails. So we say, all right, so let's see if we can find a way in which we can help you guys deliver software faster or deliver products faster, get more feedback, but also make sure that it's still understandable and easy to introduce. And we're introducing the things at the moment the problem starts occurring. So we'll introduce them to sprints, and then afterwards we'll say, all right, so we're doing like a 2-week sprint, and then after that we'll do a retro, and we'll see if we need a product owner in one person, or just put it up in a team, or we use an agile coach, or we use a scrum master. We'll fix that problem once we get to it. And what we figured out is that it works really well as a coaching tool by just reflecting back on what people are doing in the teams. And it helps create a shared commitment. Right. So what I want to do is I'd like to go through a couple cases we've seen and show you some of the I think we created another top 10 of patterns we're seeing where Scrum might not work the way you'd like it to work. And I have a couple boards with that and a couple specific examples, so I just want to go with you guys through that. These are the patterns we're seeing. So we're seeing different teams working on different phases of the development process. We put it as testing, hardening, development, but what we also see is teams doing a 2 or 3 week sprint, then having to hand over their work to, for instance, a performance testing team, a security testing team, and it's so far out of their own team that they won't be able to do it in the sprint. This is incredibly disruptive. It works, but if that team that's testing finds something, it will take out the next sprint. So it will completely obliterate every commitment we've made. We see one where, like the ERP, the large package solutions are trying to be done in a Scrum way. That doesn't always work, and I'll get back to that later. We'll see teams that have a lot of ad hoc planning, so maintenance teams is the easiest. Maintenance and operations teams are the easiest examples of these, but we see it in marketing as well, where Scrum tends to work, but you need to tweak it a bit to make it work better, just because the work is smaller, it just comes and goes randomly throughout the sprint. We work with intangibles that we do need to do, but we need to have a better focus on it. So refactoring stuff, making it really explicit to the organization that we need to fix certain problems as soon as we get to it and allocate time for it. Scrum doesn't put in that guardrail very well. If you're working with specialists, people outside of the team, if you have dependencies, so we saw it in a team that works with a lot of third-party suppliers that are external, and we had very good SLAs with them, but if you put something on the board and you know it'll take 3 weeks before it comes back, it's weird if you have a 2-week sprint. It's messing with people's heads, and mostly managers. So we have teams that say, all right, so we built something, but we don't want to wait for 2 weeks for our big demo, so we just want to demo, release, and go. But we also have stuff that just keeps us at work for 2 weeks. So we want to be able to release whenever we want, and that kind of messes with the way we do sprints. Urgent, expedited work, and then there's the expert. There's that has no availability whatsoever. You can call them, for those of you who played the Get Kanban. Who has played the Get Kanban game? It's the pink blocker sticky with Pete. And Pete would love to help you. He just doesn't have time, and he doesn't know when he will get time. Well, we have those people walking around in every organization as well. All right, so I want to go through some of them. This is the first one. So we had 3 teams, basically 3 teams working, and the arrows show how much work they could take on and produce per month, or per month-ish. These lines should be parallel, because if they're parallel, they're working away all the work that the other team is producing. If it's not, they're slower or faster. So there's a huge imbalance here. What we did here is we said, all right, so you want to put this on one board. And if you put these all these teams on one board, we created lanes for it, lanes for every team. We just tried stuff. But if you put them in lanes, oh, there you go. Oh, then that really helps to show the queues we're creating and imbalance in the system. Right. So here's another one. So who's been in a situation where like SAP was implemented in an agile way, or tried to be implemented in an agile way, or any big package solution? No? All right. So the problem we run into is that there's this beginning where it's just a standard installation and configuration phase, and that just takes time. It's something that there's no way of half configuring the tool. It doesn't work. And then after that, there's a whole bunch of time where they need to tailor the tool to actually fit the organization's needs it's being installed in. What we see is that the whole process is seen as something you can do with sprints. Except the problem is that the installation part is not really something you have to do in sprints. You can just go at it. What we did see though was that we needed the classes of service that Kanban talks about. So we had some expedite requests that would come through, but the configuration of the tool had to keep going. So we made the classes of service very explicit. And then from there, we just started visualizing the work they were doing, and we created a whole bunch of signals in the board to make sure that the installation would keep going, and we could still answer questions from customers. The thing is, though, once you start interacting in this phase, the requests will change. So they will start sending you in. So we didn't think of this before, but now we see it. We would like this screen to be different. If you do something with that, if you start changing the screen, if you start helping them with the stuff they would like to have done on the tool, you won't get the rest done. So what we did here is with the classes of service, we created a way of prioritizing and scheduling all the work, so that we could get a solid foundation, and then from there work on the top 10 most needed feature requests, and they would change over time. Anything that we could do in the time that they were working on it, we would do, because we'd know what the highest priorities were, and the rest would come later. So here's another one, similar one. Team works in a sprint. 80% of the work they do is because of interruptions during their sprint. Could be bugs, could be incidents, could be anything. So basic thing what we did here is we said, all right, so we'll visualize the disruptions we're having, create a class of service, see what's happening, and then take them on one by one. But then at least we know that we're not making our commitment. Of course, next sprint you can have a lower commitment, but you just don't know if the same amount of work is coming in. This helped us tackle the variability. Okay, so this is an older. So this team is from 2010-ish. And it's an older team. There were 2 problems in the team here. So we did Scrum with very poor quality products, which basically meant that the developers created something, and then released it to like an acceptance test area, and it would sit there for 3 months and then come back. So all the orange post-its are bugs. I don't have the picture, but it used to be more orange than this. So just visualizing the orange work, so the poor quality work, really helped us reduce it. Because the director of IT would walk around the floor, and we had this big policy that says, bugs are written on orange post-its. They don't like to see orange from that moment on. And what would happen is that, because there was a lot of ad hoc work coming in, we'd have work sitting there for a week or something. So it would be stuck here in a column, and we'd discuss it every stand-up, but it wouldn't change for some reason. So what I started doing is putting dots next to them every stand-up, and you can just do this very casually and they won't even notice in the beginning, is every time you're discussing something, you just tap the board with a marker. It takes some practice to get it next to the post-it instead of on the post-it. But that works, and at some point in time, people will be like, why are there so many dots next to that post-it? Like, well, that's what I was wondering, but I'm glad you asked. So we visualized the fact that there was a very long, seemingly unexplainable lead time. What we found out actually was that they asked for, they said, all right, so what we want to do is we want to be able to take on work that's very small, and it's questions from other teams, questions from project managers. It'll only take 15 minutes. And we think we should surface their needs and just help them out. I thought it would only take 15 minutes per day. They meant it would only take 15 minutes per task, and they would work all day on tasks like that. So apparently you can fit a lot of those requests in one day. Here's another way of dealing with that problem. So this team had a lot of the tasks that are too small to write on a post-it. It takes us longer to write it down and pull it through the board than to actually fix the problem. All right, that's a good point. We would like to know how many there are. So they would just count. So as soon as it would reach this stage, they would just increase the number. Add the task to the already existing pile. And this would help us see, all right, so this week for this application, so these are 4 applications. This week for this application, this is the amount of small unplanned work we did. Right. Nice way of tweaking it in. It would really, it really helped us being more predictable in the rest of the work we were doing. All right. So and then there's this one. You saw the little bit less fancy one of this one already. So this team had multiple product owner type people. So these people would be customers yelling in the phone, usually my phone, saying that they needed their work done faster or sooner, or and the really it wasn't Hippo, it wasn't highest paid person's opinion that would get done. It was the one yelling loudest. The problem there is that as soon as you start helping those people, people will know the trick, and other people will start doing it too. So what we did is we routed, what they did is they rerouted all the phone calls to my phone. And what I would do is compile a top 10 list, and we would reprioritize the top 10 list whenever that was needed. In practice, that meant that I only had to do work on the bottom 4 or 5. And that really helped because the team could just keep pulling work, and then getting it through their process. And they didn't have to deal with people saying, no, but I am more important than the other customer because I'm providing you with more work or paying you more or whatever argument they had. And then there was the other thing, and this was a problem I hadn't encountered before, and we tried this to see if we could fix it. They would do work, and then in every stage of the process, it could go to a third-party supplier. They would have to do work on it, and then after a fixed period, and usually it was a fixed period, it would come back to us, and we could continue work on it. we used to have them like this, so we'd block them in our system, so in our regular columns. The problem is if you do that, your board gets too full. Because there wasn't, we discussed the solution of just not working on anything else. As the CEO put it, that's unacceptable. So we had to do something, and to be fair, there wasn't any sense in stopping all other work, because we could just work. We knew it would come back, and we knew how long it would take. We just didn't want to lose sight of it. So what we did is we created an extra swim lane on the bottom, and that was basically our parking space. So we would block it, and on the pink post-it here, it would say the date we expected it to be back. And then every couple of days in the stand-up, we would check all the pink post-its. And if there was something close to the due date or on the due date, and it wasn't returned yet, or we hadn't heard anything yet, we'd start calling. So that actually made us more predictable as well. All right, so yeah. So here's what I use. The thing is that, and you won't be able to read this, I think. What I did is I created a little bit of a cheat sheet on common patterns and the stuff that I would implement if I were faced with that same problem. It's probably wrong. The empty spaces mean you don't have to. I don't have a specific recommendation, but you should do it anyway. So you don't have to. So what it says. It says if you have many external dependencies, for instance, this column, you want to introduce WIP limits, just not on the parking spaces. And all the other ones mean you need to implement WIP limits anyway. Just the added thing here is just not on a parking space. I'll put this up somewhere if you can use it, and if you can tell me what you think, that'd be really nice. We've been handing these out to Agile coaches just to see how it works, hoping that it gives sort of a guardrail-ish solution to introducing these practices with teams that are stuck. And that's what we use. So basically what we're saying is that if you're starting somewhere, you can go to Scrum, or if you introduce it gradually, you can end up doing Scrum. But you can also just find that you're using some practices on Scrum, doing some other things, and then ending up somewhere that's also Agile and reaching your goals. You could also do Scrum and then improve it to wherever you'll end up. So at some point, you'll end up somewhere, and we hope this will give you a little bit more structure. The reason why we think this works is it starts with the situation you're in. So it's very there's not much resistance to it because people tend to know the problem. You can improve from there. It helps to get a shared commitment, and it focuses on the work and not on the roles. So we're not telling product owners you're doing it wrong. We're telling people, all right, so what we're seeing is stuff is not moving because we're not prioritizing correctly, and that seems to help. All right, so then my last slide. I heard there needs to be a cat in your presentation somewhere. Thank you guys very much. Are there any questions?
On your cheat sheet, there were a couple of columns where you're, I think you're saying they had retrospectives monthly and the stand-ups last week. Can you just see what the titles were?
These?
Yeah.
So the titles of the columns, you mean?
Yeah, second and third one.
So I'll do it like this. So the first one is too much ad hoc unplannable work. The second is long lead times, longer than 30 days. Many external dependencies, low predictability on lead times, high amount of work items. That I need to look up what something dropped off. Well, if you have a high amount of work items, that and a high degree of specialization and a strong need for knowledge sharing. So I'll look up. That's a good one. I'll look up what this says. It's probably. Oh, if you have a high amount of work items that are new or that haven't been done before.
Have you written this something?
Yeah, there it is. No. No, but I can write a blog post around it. Yeah, that's good.
So you said about all their phones were redirected to you, so you got all the escalations, etc.
Yeah.
Did that just move the problem from them to you?
Yeah. So, but what it did is that, so I was in charge of managing the software department, so I wasn't doing any real work anyway. And it got them back behind their keyboard and make sure that they could do the work instead of picking up the phone calls and switching between work items. And because all of the phone calls ended up at me, I could see what the common patterns were and how we could change it. It wasn't really a sustainable situation. So there was a need for fixing the real underlying problem, but it solved it a little bit. So yeah, so I moved the problem to me. Yeah, I would have rather moved it to somebody else, but that was only me. So yeah.
You said one of the things you focus on most is limiting work in progress. Do you have any suggestions on what to do with a team that doesn't really see the benefit of the work in progress limit, and they sometimes are sneaky by just sticking things on the board which exceed the work in progress limit, or do things and not put them on the board at all?
Yeah, so I tend to be okay with people not wanting to use WIP limits, so they don't have to sneak around. But what I do is so there's a couple of things you can try. You can say, all right, so there are actual benefits to limiting your WIP, and they're quite massive. So would you guys mind trying it and that's where sprints come in, 3 sprints, or for a little while. And what you can also do is just see if you can track it a little bit, see what it does, and then lower the WIP limit gradually. That works as well.
Can I just address that?
Yeah.
I was working with a team who absolutely would not, they did the opposite of sticking to WIP, they would just open as many things as possible.
Yeah.
And after a couple of weeks of digging around, what we discovered was the reason, there's always a reason why people do these things. It wasn't just because they got bored quickly and they wanted to be super busy all the time. But basically, they were incentivized financially by the amount of tickets they had.
Yeah.
So sometimes it helps to kind of dig down and find out, are there any of those kind of reasons around why they're doing these things?
And that's a very good point you're making. So one of the things I was pointed towards, a friend of mine works at a company, and at the help desk or the customer service. They don't actually reward the people, but they give you a pat on the back if you were the person that sent out the most emails. And basically, sending out emails means that you've been interacting with customers. The problem is that if you just keep sending out emails, they don't see the difference. So there might actually be, so that's a good point. Look at if there's some perverse incentive somewhere that's holding the team back from limiting their work.
On a similar note, I always start with actually getting everything on the board before you establish WIP limits. For the simple reason that work might actually be very valuable and useful. It's just sort of that whoever is sort of the product owner just wasn't aware that the team was doing it. And sort of the main thing that happens if you try to enforce a WIP limit firmly is just that it goes underground. So if you get tickets, that's a good thing. Because otherwise we're just sort of, okay, I'll do it anyhow, because it needs to get done. And you're sort of just pushing the...
You're quite right, it's counterproductive to be telling people off about it, because otherwise they just get even less engaged in the system.
Also make sure that if you're starting to limit the WIP, is you manage the stakeholders of the team. Because if they still expect you to pick up all the work, they will start going around you and pressuring the team anyway.
I like the way you phrase that as almost like an experiment, a short period of time, 3 sprints or whatever. I've seen the opposite happen where the team, they wanted to increase their WIP limits or increase enough to add another column and then have that have a lot of extra whip in it. And again, I didn't fear it because I said, oh, why don't you guys try it and see how it affects your delivery time. And if it's just as good, then you can obviously keep it. But it has the effect of giving the team some power over its own destiny and having some sense of self-learning as opposed to doing it just because the coach is there, the scrum master, whoever is telling you to, and they can learn how to run experiments for themselves.
And I think that WIP is essentially, it's the result of two things, your working habits and your upstream. And so you need to focus on both, and most of the time you're actually getting overburdened by your upstream. So managing your upstream becomes more important than sort of limiting WIP locally. If you need to limit WIP locally, or essentially prioritize stuff, then you actually got an upstream problem. You don't got a local prioritization problem. So that can also be kind of handy to keep in mind.
Last question? All right. Thank you all.